Hi, everyone. At Altitude, we support the growth of companies from early stage to commercialization. We also promote and highlight entrepreneurs who've actually demonstrated a tenacity and a passion and remarkable resilience for developing their ideas from seed towards commercialization. Welcome to Tech Uncensored. My name is Hessie Jones, and today we want to celebrate one company, MyCo Futures North Atlantic, and its founders, Stephanie Lipp and Leo Gillis. MyCo Futures is a materials innovation startup, and now they're based in Montreal, Canada. Founded in 2021. A little bit of background, they specialize in developing a sustainable mycelium-based leather alternative for the fashion industry. And both Stephanie and Leo transitioned from running a gourmet mushroom farm to actually leading this biotechnology venture. Their product is called MyCo, and it's a circular organic material grown from the root system of fungi. And it offers a more environmentally friendly alternative to traditional leather and synthetic materials. So their approach combines vertical farming techniques with novel tanning methods, and they can create this durable, luxurious textile that can be produced in just weeks with less water, less energy compared to some of the conventional tanning leather production. Today, this company has been operational for 5 years and has gained some incredible visibility in both the clean tech space as well as the material sector. And we're excited to have both Stephanie and Leo join us today to talk about their journey towards MyCo Futures. And we're going to talk a little bit about their roots and their move towards entrepreneurship, how they moved and pivoted from gourmet mushroom farm to clean technology. So welcome, Stephanie, and welcome, Leo.
Hi, Hessie. Hello. It's great to be back on Tech Uncensored.
Thank you. I'm so happy that both of you are here with me this time. Okay, so let's start a little bit about your backgrounds, because I want the audience to really understand where you came from. So maybe we'll start with Steph. Tell me a bit about where you started in the fashion industry, in digital marketing, and then we'll get to Leo.
So I'm from Mississauga, born and raised, and I was fortunate enough to go to an arts high school. I entered as a drama major, I graduated as an art student, but I was really exposed to art and creativity every single day alongside all the other regular subjects. And so it really gave me a sense of how I wanted to be creative every day of my life. And that led me down the path of going to college for photography at Sheridan. But I did take a year off between high school and college to do a co-op program, which led me to being a photographer's assistant at one of Toronto's biggest commercial photography studios. And I got to work with not only the photographers, but the owner of the studio, the producers, the digital artists, and really just got to see a whole big world out there of what it meant to work in a creative field. And so as I moved on from assisting, started taking on my own customers, I expanded into graphic design, digital marketing. I had a lot of small businesses like selling vintage, prop styling, and event styling. But I guess with all of these, I really led with my passion and things that I was naturally good at. And looking back now, I never really focused in on the actual business side of it. But I do think I was always drawn to the fashion industry, doing fashion photography, running the fashion show in high school. So there were these inklings of what was to come, but I think there wasn't really any crystal ball that would have put me where I am today.
Interesting. So Leo, before you met Stephanie, what was your, I think, passion, or what did you go to school for, and did you end up pursuing that in your career?
No, not at all. I went to high school in Brampton, and I've always been interested in being out in nature. I've worked in a lot of warehouses and logistics, and a lot of that type of environment. So very different than what I'm doing now. I guess just given the opportunity, I fit in pretty well. So
Okay. So maybe we could talk about how, so you had a detour to nonprofit housing, but I think in between you guys actually met. So maybe you guys could talk about how you met and how you actually journeyed towards the next milestone in your relationship.
Yeah, so we actually did meet while I was working in nonprofit housing, and that was also, again, kind of a bit of a zig and zag in my career. It was supposed to be a temporary job, but I got an opportunity to do full time, and I really couldn't turn down a steady paycheck and benefits. And so for the first time in a really long time, I did the same thing every day, and it was actually my first foundation to business, because I actually was running a business of providing housing. So I learned how to review budgets, read financial statements. We were audited yearly. I presented to a board. And so it actually, in an unexpected way, gave me an intro to those really fundamental operational aspects of business. And then it was also one of the first times I really got into impact, because housing is so important. And in nonprofit housing, it's very linked to mental illness, socioeconomic injustice. But in the end, I was very ill-equipped to, kind of handle all of that. But I'm really grateful for that experience. But it was then that Leo and I met. And yeah, we started a relationship and moved in really quickly. But then I guess about a year into our relationship, we moved in together, started going to a farmer's market nearby. And Leo was really interested in the mushroom vendor. He had kind of dabbled in eating and cooking gourmet mushrooms in the past. I famously hated mushrooms. I refused to eat them. But Leo's a really good cook, so I gave him a chance.
I believe
now, were you? Sorry, go ahead.
I believe those were the yellow oysters we had, and they were delicious, fried up with soy sauce. Actually, very delicious.
So were you in Newfoundland at the time, or like this whole thing about like mushrooms? How did your move get you to out east?
So the Newfoundland part came in a little bit later, another year after we had moved in together. We had visited Leo's hometown, and we thought Newfoundland was beautiful, but Leo hadn't lived there for over 20 years. It was really small, and living in Mississauga, you can have everything, but we learned how inexpensive houses were there, and there's a housing crisis and crazy prices in the GTA. So truly as a joke, I Googled moving to Newfoundland, thinking I'd find a blog about someone who had done, the city to rural life. And I didn't quite find that blog, but I did find articles about Bonavista, the town we ended up moving to. And it was experiencing an entrepreneurial renaissance after the cod moratorium of the 1990s effectively shut down the economies of rural towns, because that was what was most heavily relied on for the people who live there. So, people had to move away. These towns kind of died out, but Bonavista was bringing back young people, businesses, and really had a vibrant local community and a lot of tourists. So with our interest in fungi, a house we could afford by the ocean, and our desire to address food insecurity that we learned about on the island, that's kind of how this whole idea came together. And so in December of 2018, myself and my two best friends visited the house. And then we moved in May of the next year.
Okay, so this was a mushroom farm, correct?
To start a gourmet mushroom farm, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about it. You're plunging in to like a brand new venture, not really knowing enough about mushrooms, apart from the fact that you don't like them. So, so what was the business opportunity at the time when you had decided to do this?
So we pretty much I learned how to grow mushrooms from reading books and just making a bunch of mistakes and learning and that. And we pretty much dove right in. When we got to Newfoundland, our friends built us a laminar flow hood so we can work cleanly. And we just really dived in when we moved there. And we're delivering mushrooms to people and taking them to the farmers market and selling them.
Yeah.
So
there's like a captive local audience, a town of 4,000 people, and then another 4,000 along the peninsula, the Bonavista Peninsula, that had a farmers market at the end. There was also lots of tourists, and Newfoundland has a really strong food culture, but it's also heavily reliant on imported food. So we want to really bridge that gap of outside food ideas and food culture, but also renewing the interest in local food culture and educating around self-sufficiency, nutrition, bringing in cooking classes, bringing people together through food, while, growing something that could be done year round. So it didn't matter if it was a hurricane, if it was raining, if it was sunny, any of the elements that you could find on our peninsula, we were kind of sheltered from it, and we could provide at least one food source throughout the year, which was, something that was really hard to come by there.
So I would assume that you engage in a lot of like community events and to raise awareness for what you're selling, and you're integral or integrated into those communities.
Yes, we certainly did whatever we could. Community sales, events. We really try to get to know the other, well-known business owners from there. And it really helped going to the farmers market because we just really got to talk to people. Some of these people had either grown up never eating mushrooms or eating like the gray, slimy canned mushrooms, or hearing horror stories of like foraged mushrooms. So we were literally starting from scratch to explain to people how to cook them, what they were. The first farmers market we ever did, we only had lion's mane, which looks kind of like white coral or something like fluffy. Pom-poms. Yeah. Like people did not know what it was, but we still managed to sell it out on the first day.
Oh, that's it. So how did you actually learn about the mushroom industry? Because obviously this is, you dove in, but from your perspective, you're educating local people about it and selling it at the same time. But where do you have time to actually understand more about the industry itself, and especially from a food perspective?
YouTube was really great. There's a lot of great content creators of farmers, and the one of the great things about the mushroom community is that it's very grassroots. It's very community driven. So from foraging to like mushroom cultivation, there's all these very cottage industry people who just immerse themselves. I mean, there's lots of amazing academics and researchers, but it's such a mix. There's all kinds of people doing things in their backyards, doing experiments in their kitchen. And so we really leaned into that to feel part of a very DIY, citizen science community, which has continued to be really cool and useful to us to learn new things.
Okay, so how long were you cultivating your business before you started learning or even thinking about this dramatic pivot that happened? Maybe you could talk about that. Like, how did that even happen?
From the start, we had always been looking at other mushroom companies and amazed at what you could do with mycelium, the innovation. And we had been looking at gourmet mushrooms and nutraceuticals as a exportable, something that could travel. So we never thought that we could do that. We're like, that's super cool. We support them. But we didn't know what a startup was. And we were like, we're happy to be fans until one day.
Yeah, so we're composting some of our mushroom blocks outside the house, and I was trying to break them apart with a shovel, and I couldn't get them to break it apart. So I was mowing the lawn one day, and I got a bit frustrated, and I hit the block with the lawnmower, and the lawnmower never started again after that. So we knew that we had a strong material that had good mechanical properties. So it's pretty cool.
And at the same time, we were in a pre-accelerator that had gone virtual because of the pandemic, that was based in St. John's, which was 3.5 hours away. But thankfully, that was the first cohort they did virtually. And our advisor encouraged us to kind of dig in more to materials because nutraceuticals were a little bit saturated already, and we didn't have the physical space to scale like other companies could. So we started doing research about what it would actually mean to have a materials company. But we were intrigued. So in 3 months, Leo created our very first prototype. It was like just this big, very tiny, but it was a flat, flexible piece of material comprised only of the root system of fungi. And that won us our first pitch competition, which was in November of 2021. So we had cash, confidence from winning a pitch competition, and we started talking to customers and doing discovery. And we found that even though there were some really well-known, famous companies, there was a lot of makers who felt very strongly about adopting new materials that weren't able to access it. And that really is what was the catalyst for us to put our hat in the ring to try to bring mushroom mycelium material to market.
So did you know of any other company or early stage or otherwise that was using mushrooms for materials?
Yes, there are a couple there. So MyCoWorks, they're, you know, one of the original companies doing that. There's a company called Bolt Threads that has since ceased production on their mycelium material, and Ecovative, which is one of the original mycelium innovators. They do packaging, they do foams, bacon, and mushroom mycelium leather alternatives. So there are companies out there like doing amazing things. And then there are other companies doing leather alternatives from cactus, pineapple, kombucha, all kinds of alternatives. But we still, knowing what we knew about fungi, we thought that this would be like the best method to create an alternative.
Well, because fungi grows naturally intertwined, so it does resemble cow leather a lot closer than other types of leathers.
Mm-hmm. And it's abundant. It's not something that will go away anytime soon. Correct. So this
exactly.
Yeah.
It's completely regenerative. We take in waste products like sawdust and agricultural waste. And so we can grow as much of it as we need to or want to, only based on the food source. And the food source isn't a rare resource. It's a part of the waste stream of agriculture. So, we're able to see how this fit into ideas about circular consumption.
Okay. So what did you notice about the textile industry when you started working within your mushroom business? Because obviously it drew you to actually develop something for that specific industry. So what were you doing at the time, and what were you researching?
Absolutely. And I mean, as everyone gets taught in accelerators and doing startups, you have to be passionate about the problem, not just your own solution. And so we really became passionate about how much waste there was in the fashion industry, not just in leather, but just across the board. And no one solution can tackle all of it. So we just decided to pick our lane, our little slice of it. We saw how much greenwashing and misinformation there was about what sustainability is. That word is almost completely lost meaning at this point, because people, can say whatever they want to say, and very few consumers are able to dig deeper on what that means. And for us, the solution to that is data and evidence of what you're doing, and lots of transparency. But we did see the hope and the attempt to search for new solutions, and that brands were making the effort. And we strongly believe in progress over perfection. But there's certain things that are not viable long-term, and using plastics, even recycled plastics, we just don't believe that that's viable long-term. And there were brands doing collaborations, and we're like, if we can work with creative brands making beautiful things that appeal to people, this is the way into showing that this is a viable solution going forward.
Okay. So let me see here. Mycelium in place of leather. I know you talked a little bit about it earlier and how it's regenerative, it's durable, but tell me a little bit more about the properties of it and why people should consider it as their durable alternative for their purses or their wallets.
With some of the things we described of having a complex root system, being able to grow on a waste product, the actual way it grows, we grow it like a skin on top of the food source, and we can actually grow it quite dense. And so I have a piece here. It can create a lot of body and thickness. And when people touch this, it really does feel like leather. It has, because it was previously alive, it does carry that kind of intangible experience of smoothness, of something that isn't just plastic. Plastic is dead. It's been dead for millions of years. And so it doesn't have that same visceral response. But when people feel our material, especially in our prototype bag, like they just have that feeling memory of what leather is. And I think that's something that's really nice when you don't have to use backings and you don't have to use plastic coatings.
Okay, so in terms of volume of material compared to, I guess, the development of leather from cowhide, like what is there a proportionate amount of material that you need or mycelium that you need to use to actually develop, let's say, the same bag that you would have for leather? Can you talk a little bit about the production?
What's great about how we grow it is that the size of the end piece is only limited by the shape of the container. So if we want a sheet that's 6 feet long, we just have to have a 6 foot long container and have the food source to fill it, because to the mycelium, it doesn't know the difference between a tiny box or a huge long bin. Like that's kind of the cool part. So we can actually customize our sheets for our customers. And if you have a furniture designer who needs something really long without seams, we can make that for them. And that kind of puts us in the middle of like a cowhide, which, is irregularly shaped. There's different consistencies, there's holes from damage, which makes it hard to use up all of the material consistently. There are benefits to how synthetics come on a roll, but having something on a big tube can actually make shipping really hard. You can't ship a long thing, so we can actually have a lot of flexibility in terms of logistics and making sure that the way our customers' patterns are laid out are cut out really efficiently with as little waste in the negative space as possible.
Okay, that's really cool. So what have you produced today in terms of like your material? What are you prototyping as, let's say, your first products?
So we do have a travel bag that we are launching with ShearTex. There's a pre-sale right now, and there is 3,000 available. We've partnered with them.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about that partnership and how that came about? That's so exciting.
So we've been working towards finding a way to scale up, and we called it our room scale. So something bigger than our lab, but not quite a full pilot yet. And we've been fundraising for a while, talking about what this means is like a proof of concept, the ability to churn out material, make it consistent, predictable, of a size. And it was just really hard to do that when we were using storage totes in a basement. Like it just wasn't feasible. So this SRTX ShearTex opportunity came really at the perfect time. And very unexpectedly, I was invited to we were invited by University of Toronto to participate in like a mini market of some of the U of T startups that actually physically made products. But part of the event was a fireside chat with the CEO of ShearTex, Catherine Hamath, and the CEO of Danby Appliances. And the theme was Move Fast and Make Things as a play on Move Fast and Break Things. And talking about the importance and significance of manufacturing, especially in North America. And Catherine had also spoken at my Mars Women in Clean Tech Accelerator graduation the month before, but I hadn't had a chance to speak to her. And so I asked for an introduction to her to see if we could meet up before this event. And despite her busy calendar, she did say yes. So we met up at Soho House, which in itself I thought was so fancy. And I told her what we were doing. She had seen our deck. She asked like what we were looking for. And I thought maybe she'd give some tips on fundraising or how to sell people on a novel material. But we walked out of that call having a purchase order for $100,000 worth of material, a launch of this physical product. So we'd have the B2B traction and the B2C traction, and being the first company to be incubated in their SRTX Origins incubator, which comes with the space that we're in now in their factory in Montreal, access to the incredible minds and expertise on the SRTX team. And it's just been incredible. So this has really given us a huge leapfrog into actual production. And somewhere across the ocean, probably in the Pacific, we have custom 1 by 1 square meter trays and custom racks coming. So we'll finally be able to grow our first 200 square meters of material, when before we were making, just smaller sheets at a time. And this is, our opportunity to put this process into like a larger scale and then grow from there.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. Okay, so but before this, you know, you're growing your company, you're in the clean tech space, and so like many other clean tech founders who are trying to find alternatives that haven't yet been, I'd say, legally even adopted in Canada, it has to go through some kind of testing. Were you both aware about what the demands were for clean tech founders in Canada, and more important, actually developing a company like this and trying to grow it to, you know, I'd say the vision that you want it to be in an industry that's still emerging? Like, what were your thoughts in the beginning, and how did that play out at the time?
At the beginning, you know, clean tech is used. You're like, for us at least, it was synonymous with something great, like clean tech. It's something good. And I mean, we generally still believe that, but there's just so many flavors of clean tech. We didn't realize like how subdivided from energy, carbon capture, materials, and then so much SaaS. And, you know, we're not going to knock the SaaS, but sometimes, you know, it was surprising how heavily focused funding investment was leaning on digital problems to physical solutions. So that was something surprising to us. Also along the same lines that we thought, okay, by virtue of being clean tech, everyone must be on board with this. It must be an automatic, yes, awesome, let's get it going. But we realized that clean tech was really just a category. It wasn't a virtue signal by any means. And dollars and cents really still are the drivers of investment, adoption, things like that. And then learning that our type of clean tech and materials was not really a major focus in Canada. And I mean, there's so much amazing innovation, so much amazing clean tech. You know, Canada is a great, very ambitious building ground for this, but just we couldn't always find specific support for us, funding for us, space for us to use. So we realized just by virtue of wanting to do something good for the environment, that didn't automatically mean there was like a easy path ahead. And just knowing so many other founders now, I just happen to, most of them are in clean tech or impact startups. And yeah, we all have similar stories of how it's just really hard. And again, there's no category where it's ever easy to build a business or anything disruptive, but we just probably didn't think it was going to be this hard.
Yeah, no, I remember speaking to you before, and I know you were talking about how there was a lot of buzz about, you know, more clean technology in Europe, and how like it just seemed to be like a hub for that kind of innovation. Is that especially considering the trips you've taken there? What do you think compared to Canada?
I do think it's a different ecosystem, especially the more I've got to know it, and maybe they're just as risk adverse, if not more risk adverse in some ways. But I think in terms of general understanding of the urgency with which we need to deploy tech, I think Europe is doing a great job in that. And I guess having so many countries and infrastructures so close together really allows you to feel like you can grow quickly, because here in Canada, we only really have one option, and we can see how fast things change there. But at least in Europe, it's like the European Union, but it's like all these decentralized governments and customer pools really that you can look at. So I think there's still a lot of value to looking at expansion and including the European market in clean tech adoption. Okay.
Leo, I want to ask the next couple of questions to you because you're more the technical guy in the team. I assume that the leather that you created wasn't something that you could manufacture overnight or even just perfect overnight. Can you talk about how you actually develop mycelium leather, like the perfect texture and the perfect combination of ingredients, and also talk about I think there was something that I read about your struggle in producing 1 by 1 meter selections of this.
Sorry, can you repeat that last part?
Yeah, the 1 by 1 meter sheets of the mycelium material. That was one of the challenges, I believe.
So yeah, of course, with growing mushrooms, you always deal with a certain level of contamination from the beginning, especially when you're learning and starting out. Any competing fungus or bacteria will definitely thrive in an environment that you're trying to grow the mushroom in. And until you have everything to be sterile and clean and sterilized and treated, it's like impossible to grow the strain you selected. And then just working with the same species of fungi for like the past 3 years now, it's been pretty incredible, like how much you can learn just by like watching something grow for 3 years. It's like watching grass grow. And so you know like what buttons to tweak and what to add, and you kind of just figure it out slowly and just make a bunch of mistakes and make note of it. And then the tanning process, which was, you know, like I don't know how much I can say about it. Was just pretty much a process that came together pretty easily for me. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it really without saying too much, right?
Yeah, without divulging any of your IP. But but I assume because like you both said, like this is not something that this is not an industry that you knew well. And so even like who would have known that you would actually have to look at understanding the tanning process for leather at some point in the future of it, you know what I mean? So, you know, the fact that this is a lot of this is self-taught, and it's learning from experts who understand mycelium and its properties and how to use it. I mean, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's just for like how many decades people have been growing mushrooms like indoors in controlled environments. It's pretty impressive because people have been trying to learn how to grow morels since the start of this, and I think they finally figured out how to crack it in China after something like 40 or 50 years of people growing mushrooms, even longer probably. And they finally cracked it and figured it out. And it's like, if you look at the process to grow morels, it's like completely difficult. Like it's very like finicky, and it's like it only works.
This is where you're educating me because I have no idea. I know I love morels, but what is the challenge in growing it?
Because they like low nutrition. Like they will pop up when areas that flood and like that had fire damage. They're very fast to grow, but they need a certain stage of like just no nutrition and like no like anything for it. It's like you gotta give it like nothing to get started and get it to become strong. And I've seen people like throw an apple core like next to the pile, and it's like, this will help it grow. It'll reach for this nutrition and reach for that across like the barren kind of like desolate grow area that they're growing it in soil. And it will like reach towards that apple, and it's the only way to get it to do that. You need that barren soil, like you need that flood or that burn something. It's just a weird, mysterious mushroom.
That's interesting.
Up at weird times, yeah.
It sounds fascinating.
One way I like to put it for people is that, you know, you see mushrooms growing on your lawn in the forest. There's mushrooms growing on the metal reactors in Chernobyl. But as soon as you bring them indoors and you try to control them, they become like little babies. They're so hard. And that's just, I think it's hilarious because they have this capacity to grow everywhere. They hold our forest together. They hold our crops in the field together. But as soon as you, you know, bring them indoors, well, I call them divas. I don't hope that's not derogatory, but they just have to be babied, and it's really funny.
Yeah, interesting. Like a house plant in that way, right? Like a house plant will grow outside, or an outdoor plant will grow outside. But as soon as you bring it inside, and it's like, look, you have a controlled environment. You should love it here. And they're like, I don't get enough water. I'm gonna just die.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. So it's like mushrooms are very similar.
That they're not meant to be controlled. You're saying, right?
throw tantrums, that's for sure.
Okay, so tell me, Steph, was there a moment when you felt that you're onto something? What was was there a catalyst when you and Leo kind of looked at each other and said, I think we're going to make it. I think there's something about what we're doing that starts to change.
I think we've had these little moments, like when Leo first discovered we had this fungi, which was like one aha when he made our prototype, when we won our pitch competition. There's all these little milestones, but I think the thing that made it most concrete for us was when we made our prototype. So this, our little bag and this, because it turned, a material is just a flat piece, and inherently it needs another step to make it useful or make, the reason for it existing. So turning it into a 3D object that people could understand and they could see that, my things are in it, was really a turning point, not just for us, but for our reaction to it, because we understood all this stuff behind the scenes, but you don't really see that when you just see the sheet. But when you can explain to someone that you do all these steps, you like baby them, you learn about them, and then it turns into something you can put your objects in and you can have and hold. That was, I think, really special. And just the feedback from the brand designer who made it, saying this was like leather, I loved working with it, that was edifying. And then, the big one, when we finally, got this purchase order and got this space going, it was like a next level, like, oh, this is what really it's like to actually go and work, to have somewhere to go every day, have all, those pressure cookers going, have these racks coming that were custom made for us. And that was a big culmination of just like a lot of planning and talking about it. And now we're actually doing it.
Yeah, no, that's great to see. Do you point to, let's say, some significant moments or milestones in the last 5 years that you think helped you get to where you are today?
There's like countless milestones. Like everything's almost a milestone at this point. If you think back on it, it's like everything kind of happened for a reason. Like the lawnmower, the move to Newfoundland, just everything was like a combination of things that all led to this one thing, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, being in a lot of the accelerators has helped, and each one is kind of like a level up. We've done creative destruction lab. We were able to do Altitude Accelerator investment readiness, which was super helpful and really got us and kept us in touch with the Altitude community. One of what our really cool moments was when our bag and material was on display at the Museum of Science and Technology in Vienna. We never expected that, and it was just amazing to see that alongside some other incredible innovations from like the last 200 years of history in Europe. So there's all these moments that have pushed us forward, that have proved traction, that have got us in front of people, who've got us in rooms with certain people and groups. And I think in the startup, there's never really ever going to be one thing, but it's how you pick up the pebbles along the way and carry them with you to be useful later.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now I'm going to throw in a little bit of a, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's a prognostication, because there is going to be hope for the industry. I want you to talk a little bit about that for your company, but I'll also, from the perspective that we may have a little bit of a government change in politics. And so what does that mean for you? What does that mean for the industry?
I think there's always this apprehension when there's big government changes, but I think it's our job as founders to just stay agile, prepare for any eventuality, not have anything too intrinsically linked to a government. We just have to have our own way of moving forward, independent of that. But we hope that whoever's there and who's ever helping to make decisions will really have this push towards mass adoption of next-gen materials and create that incentive for that. Legislation is one thing, having laws to follow, but it shouldn't only be because you don't want to get fined. There should be some extra added bonus. I think a lot of other industries that might be a bit more extractive have always been bailed out. They've been propped up. They've been incentivized, and I think it's time for a shift in the other direction. And then also, have more framework around greenwashing and data and transparency, because as I said, that's the best way to combat misinformation and greenwashing, is to just have the data. And I think having ways to collect that, ways to share that is really important. I think in general, we need better infrastructure for recycling, reuse, upcycling. We really want to always look at that circular economy rather than anything linear. And I think that should also culminate in like drastically reducing plastic use. We're also in a clean tech bubble. So we meet all the other companies trying to do better menstrual pads to reusable medical equipment, like all these cool things. And I think I always say, the proverb of the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time is today. All these things have been needed for the last 10 years. We're just getting to this critical tipping point of climate change now and realizing, oh no, we've, waited too long. And I just hope there's this general push of cooperation to, ship and adopt and take these things that will all working towards the same goal of reducing consumption, making life on Earth better for people and animals. And I can go on this along because I don't think our thing is the one solution. I truly believe in this cooperative, collaborative view of reversing climate change.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. I also I always compare this to almost like Noah's Ark and how he warned people for years. And yes, it is maybe a fable to some people, but we've known about climate change. I remember the whole reduce, reuse, recycle when I was, 1986, right before I started university. And it took more than 20 years to even get that program up and running. There are still cities within Canada that don't have it. So I'm hoping that this is a tipping point, that things start to change, and that, yeah, we are at a point where we have to do something about it. And it's not about fun innovation, try to capitalize on this stuff. This is about survival in the next 30 to 50 years. So, okay, I won't be too morbid. One last question.
Like, we want to call people in, but also be like, this is urgent. This is
urgent. Absolutely. Okay, so I want you to impart your wisdom to entrepreneurs who are looking to innovate in this space, or even just to try to change the world in their own way. What would you say to them?
I would say, and again, these might start becoming cliches of the startup world, but I think you truly need to be passionate about the problem, not just your own solution. It's not about you; it's about the impact of other people's problems and how you can bring that value to solve them. And maybe you can't, and that comes along with customer discovery. So we don't need more stuff on the planet, and that something for us, we're like, we can only do this if we're doing it the right way and we're upholding our values in terms of not only creating a product that has, good end of life, but also how are we going to treat the people that work for us? How are we affecting communities where our products are made? How are we, that's sounds idealistic, but that was the only way that we could justify it to ourselves to make something else on this already saturated planet. So having a really strong why, having strong values, and also not thinking that it's like a get rich quick thing. I mean, there's this AI, and I know you work and advocate so strongly for AI, and there's definitely a place for it, but it's not the answer. It's a tool. It's a part of, making things happen. So I think innovating in clean tech is believing in it so hard that you're willing to fight the good fight, because it's disheartening to know that no matter how good your intentions are, money is the driver. And so if you don't have a good case for that, if you don't have a good plan for it, it's going to be climbing Everest.
Absolutely. Well, the good thing is that I think even VCs are starting to see that there is money to be made in a clean tech world, which is great. I know it is a little bit more of a hurdle, but they see it. I think the whole impact investment side is starting to creep up a lot more these days, and even in the next decade. So thank you so much, Steph and Leo. You both had amazing things to say, and you've given a lot of inspiration and wisdom to people who want to innovate in this space, and to entrepreneurs as well. So thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Hesse.
No problem. So I think we do need a lot more founders. We do need a lot more female founders for sure. And thank you for being the inspiration for many female founders. For our audience, if you have topics that you want us to explore, please email us at communications@altitudeaccelerator.ca. Tech Uncensored, it's powered by Altitude Accelerator. We're hosted on Spotify. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, my name's Hesse Jones. I invite you to stay curious and to be inspired.